In this video, I'll be explaining what ethical and legal practice is, and then I'll be providing guidance on what each behavioral statement means and how to provide evidence for each behavioral statement mentioned. I'll give you a brief introduction as to what ethical and legal practice is, what's the difference between the two, and then I'll explain the behavioral statements and then provide guidance on how to provide evidence for each behavioral statement. When you are done with this video, you should be able to differentiate between legal and ethical practice. You should understand the meaning of each behavioral statement, and you should be able to provide evidence for each behavioral statement mentioned. Ethical and legal practice involves adhering to a set of principles and regulations that guide our professional behavior. These principles ensure that pharmacists, as well as pharmacy interns, carry out provide high quality care while respecting the rights and the well-being of the patients. Okay? We must practice in a professional and legal ethical manner to deliver patient-centered pharmaceutical service and work in a multidisciplinary service. This means that we need to be able to consistently apply ethics and adhere to the standards that relate to the activity that you want to do so that we can provide safe, effective, and equitable healthcare. Legal practice refers to complying with the laws, the regulations, and the standards established by governing bodies that regulate the practice of pharmacy. These include complying with the sets of rules and regulations set up by the SAPC. It includes, being licensed or maintaining valid license according to the Pharmacy Act. It includes just making sure that medicines are controlled. We are properly managing and dispensing controlled substances according to the Medicines and Related Substance Control Act. It also includes ensuring that the prescriptions that we dispense are valid and legal and they comply to the requirements of the Medicines Act. Ethics refer to adhering to moral principles or the code of conduct that guides pharmacists. In short, ethics equals to the code of conduct or moral principles. These guide us in making decisions that are in the best interest of the patient and overall society. They include ensuring that we uphold the well-being of the patient, upholding the honor and the dignity of the pharmacy profession, cooperating with healthcare professionals in our provision of pharmaceutical care. Now that you have a basic understanding of what ethics are and what does it mean to practice legally, let's go to understanding the different behavioral statement in CPD 5.3. Behavioral statement A says applying the Pharmacy Act, which is Act number 53 of 1974, the Medicines and Related Substance Control Act, which is Act number 101 of 1965, and any other applicable legislation in daily practice. So the reason why I divided this behavioral statement in different parts is so that you see that to comply with the requirements of behavioral statement A, you need to provide evidence for how you apply the Pharmacy Act, how you apply the Medicines and Related Substance Control Act, and any other applicable legislation in practice. What does applying the Pharmacy Act mean? It means you must first understand the importance of complying to legal requirements and adhere to the standards set out in this act. So first know why. As pharmacists and interns, we must comply. It's just compliance. Number two is in the activity that you are doing, you need to incorporate the regulations and requirements that are outlined in the Pharmacy Act in that practice and in your daily practice. It also includes that we need to provide safe, effective, and ethical care to patients by following the guidelines. So it all depends with what activity you are doing, and then in that activity, incorporate the Pharmacy Act. So what is this act about? The act governs the pharmacy profession in South Africa. It outlines the regulatory framework for the practice of pharmacy, ensuring that pharmacists, as well as interns and other support personnel, adhere to high standards of professionalism and ethics. Ethics equals to code of conduct to ensure that the public is protected and is safe. It provides the legal framework for the practice of pharmacy. including the licensing and regulations of pharmacists and pharmacies. So you need to be practicing in a pharmacy that is approved. You also need to be registered. This is what the Act says. It outlines the standard for the practice and professional conduct required for pharmacists. So already you can see that the Pharmacy Act contains information on ethics and the code of conduct. It also specifies the qualifications and the trainings which are necessary to become a licensed pharmacist. So as you understand what the Act is about, in the activity that you're doing, you then have a basic understanding of what I need to be looking out for. Also in the same behavior statement A, applying the Medicines and Related Substance Control Act. What does this mean for pharmacists? It means that we must incorporate the regulations and requirements outlined in this Act. We must always endeavor to regulate the control, the manufacture, the distribution, the sale, and the use of medicines and related substances, which could be surgical items. It ensures the availability and use of safe, efficacious, and quality medicines and medicines product in South Africa. So the Medicines and Related Substance Control Act regulates some of these things. So in the activity that you are doing, how are you applying the Pharmacy Act, the Medicines Act? So you need to be clear about the activity and then find out the laws that relate to that activity that you're doing. So the primary purpose of the Medicines and Related Substance Control Act is to ensure the safety, the efficacy, and quality of medicines and medicines products available in South Africa. It regulates the control, the manufacture, the distribution, the sale, and the use of medicines and related substances. It ensures that the medicines that we keep and distribute in South Africa are safe, effective, and of high quality before they can be marketed and sold. It defines the rules for prescribing and dispensing medicines, including scheduled substances. So as you then begin your activity, you will then find regulations that pertain to dispensing medicines. So if the activity that you're doing is dispensing, you need to find out what the Medicines and Related Substance Control Act says about dispensing and prescribing. So other applicable legislation include the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which is Act 85 of 1993. So the Occupational Health and Safety Act aims to ensure the health and safety of workers at workplaces and those affected by workplace activities, requiring employees and employers to provide a safe and healthy environment and take measures to prevent injury and disease. The other one is the National Health Act, which aims to establish a structured, uniform national health service which ensures access to healthcare services for everyone, and it outlines the responsibilities of different governing levels in providing healthcare. The last one being the Medical Schemes Act. The main purpose of this act is to protect the interest of beneficiaries of medical schemes. So it strives to be a fair custodian of equitable access to medical schemes, and in order to support the empowerment of universal access to healthcare. So these are just some of the other applicable legislations that you can apply. Statement B says, practicing within the scope of practice of a pharmacist, recognizing own limitation of personal competency and expertise. So it's divided into two. You practice within your scope of practice and you recognize your own limitations, because of personal competency and your expertise. So behavioral statement B says, practicing within the scope of practice of a pharmacist and recognizing own limitations. For pharmacy and support personnel, this means that we have a professional and ethical responsibility to operate within the bounds of our education, our training, and legal permissions. We need to be aware of and acknowledge the limits of our knowledge and skills. You are not going to do a blood screening if you are not trained or you don't understand it, so you don't include that as part of what you then did. So maybe you are dispensing, you dispense according to your scope of practice and apply the rules that relate to that and ensure that you are not exceeding your scope or you're doing someone else's scope, but you refer. So specific reference to this is General Regulations 1158, which was published in 20 November 2000. That scope of practice, we first have to understand the range of services and the range of the services that we are authorized to perform by the SAPC, under the scope of practice of a pharmacist, and specifically for you as an intern, then you'll go and check what does the scope of practice say for a pharmacy intern. This includes that you are dispensing medication, you are providing medicine therapy management, you are conducting health and wellness screenings, you are administering immunization, you are offering patient education and counseling. Part of this behavioral statement says recognizing limitations. It means that we need to be aware of situations that exceed our expertise or competency. This may involve identifying cases where specialized knowledge and skills are required. Then you refer. It means recognizing when a patient needs to be referred to another healthcare professional. It means staying informed about changes in clinical guidelines and applying best practices. For pharmacy interns, this may mean you are being supervised while performing the tasks or the activity that you are discussing in 5.3. Statement C says keeping abreast of legislation and applying amendments accordingly. So first you need to know and then apply. So staying informed, it means continually monitoring and understanding new laws, regulations, and guidelines that affect our practice as pharmacists. It means applying these amendments, so you integrate these changes to daily practice. This could involve if you then updated an SOP, you revised a document or practice, or you altered patient care records, or new legislation that you then apply to that specific activity that you're doing. Statement D says complying with professional indemnity requirements. So what does complying with professional indemnity requirements mean? It means we must have insurance coverage that covers us against legal claims arising from professional activities. Professional indemnity insurance is also known as professional liability insurance. It provides coverage for legal costs and damages in the event of a claim of negligence, errors, and omissions in the provision of your professional services. So while acting under your scope of practice, maybe a dispensing error occurred and there were legal claims against that. So because you have indemnity insurance, you will be covered for that. A specific reference would be Board Notice 83 of 2008, which was published on 29 August 2008. So professional indemnity insurance is a requirement. It's an obligation. You can't not have it. So you need to also know what you're covered for. So in your insurance, just check what you're covered for. And again, you must have insurance. And it must be your own. It can't be under a facility name. It must state your name, details, and everything, and also specify what you're covered for. Behavioral statement E says practicing and adhering to the obligations of the pharmacist in terms of the principles of the statutory code of conduct for pharmacists. So again, I highlighted the specific statement, the principles of the statutory code of conduct. So you need to be aware what this is and what does it cover. This means that you follow ethical and professional guidelines set forth by the SAPC. You adhere to the ethics and the standards that guide us in making decisions that are in the best interest of the patients and society. It ensures that we provide high quality, ethical, and professional care to our patients. These are the specific sections of the Code of Conduct or ethics. It means that we must ensure the well-being of the patient, we must uphold the honor and the dignity of the profession, we must maintain confidentiality, participate in CPD activity, cooperate with healthcare professionals, and ensure professional independence. You can refer to Board Notice 108 and General Guidance or General Regulations 31534 of 24 October 2008 for further guidance of on what this means. Also means that we inform the public about the services we offer. It means we maintain the professional appearance in the nature of the pharmacy. It means exercising control over medicines. It means exercising control over chemicals sold and provided in a pharmacy. Complying with dual registration requirements from, the SAPC. It means that a pharmacy owner must use approved trading titles and brand names and logos. Part two. In part two, I will be providing guidance on the evidence that you can include in each behavioral statement. And yeah, depending on the activity that you will be doing, if it's relevant to you, then it's fine. If it's not, then you can look at the evidence or type of evidence that you can include to comply. Again, for 5.3, because it is 5 behavioral statement and you need to provide evidence for at least 75%. So even if you provide evidence for 4 behavioral statements, it's still okay. But you must make sure that the evidence that you provide for the 4 behavioral statement are sufficient to cover that behavioral statement. But for best practices, I always advise that you cover all 5, so that if it happens that you don't cover all of them, the other one will then come into play. So for applying the Pharmacy Act, you can include the scope of practice, but specifically referencing where in the Pharmacy Act it speaks about this. You can include the services which may be provided in the various categories of pharmacies. You can include the code of conduct of pharmacists. You can include what constitute good pharmacy practice. You can include the regulations that are published on the pharmacia. You can refer to Section 35A of the Pharmacy Act for just further guidance on this. Medicines Act, you can include Section 22A, which is about the control of medicines, scheduled substances, and medical devices, including IVDs, which stands for in vitro diagnostics. You can include Section 22F of the Medicines Act, which is about generic substitution. Regulation 3 of the Act is about compounding medicine. Regulation 10 is about the labeling of medicines. Be careful that if you reference a resource like on the GPP and it's not the latest regulations, then you can get into trouble. So the latest regulations as published for medicine labeling is Regulation 10. Can include Regulation 12 of the Medicines Act, which speaks about patient information leaflets and the information that needs to be provided on it. Can include Regulation 33 for evaluating a prescription. For Statement B, we need to act according to the scope of practice. You can refer to this in General Regulations 1158 of 20 November 2000. This is when you refer patients when necessary according to your scope. You practice under supervision if you're a pharmacy intern. For Statement C, you need to provide evidence of the latest regulation or law that you apply. So you can refer to the pharmacia for information on updates to regulations. You can ask your senior colleague for reference to recent updates. You can conduct regular audits on practices to ensure compliance, like SOPs and stuff like that. You can provide evidence for subscription. Recently, the SAPC launched a WhatsApp service. So you can just a WhatsApp channel. So you can just subscribe to that channel, look at the regulations that are published there, and then apply them in practice. Board Notice 83 of 29 August 2008 or Section 35 of the GPP states that any person registered with the South African Pharmacy Council who performs one or more of the functions relating to the scope of practice of the category in which he or she is registered must be covered by his or her indemnity insurance. So it must be yours. So you need to provide a copy of your indemnity cover. An application will not be enough to cover this. For Statement E, you need to check which part of the ethics were you applying, and then you annotate according to that. This is an example of someone applying ethics or the code of conduct. This is section 1.1 on the well-being of the patient. Then you just annotate and then you show how you applied ethics in this specific example. Ethical and legal practice involves adhering to a set of principles and regulations that guide our professional behavior. First, understand what activity you're doing, and then decide which laws relate to that. You then need to have your own indemnity cover, not an application. And it must clearly state that either intern or pharmacist or whatever can state. And you can apply ethics and the law in other scenarios beside dispensing. I hope this video helps. Thank you.